Resident Evil.
Resident Evil, a game franchise that has spanned 7 mainline titles, over 10 spin-off games, 3 remakes, 6 horrible movies, a few comics, and even some novels. Even someone who hasn't played too many games has at least heard of the name Resident Evil. It's incredible to think that all this started back in 1996 when the first game in the series, simply called Resident Evil, released on the PlayStation 1. As a huge fan of the survival horror genre, I've been meaning to get into this series. So, that's exactly what I did. Resident Evil received a remake in 2002, and then got an upscale re-release in 2014 for modern platforms. So, I started there. This remake is regarded as one of the best remakes of all time, even better than the original. But I didn't want to just go off hearsay, so I did play the original as well. I'll be going in depth with this remake, as well as touching on the original. With that introduction out of the way, let's enter survival horror. When booting up the game, you're greeted with a 20-second clip of a zombie rising up from a body bag, to only then be shot in the head by the person behind the camera. If you somehow started Resident Evil with no clue of what it's about, well, now you know. It's a zombie game. This clip also hints at the player that it's a good idea to aim for the head. The main menu isn't anything to write home about, but I do like this eye piercing into my soul. After starting a new game and choosing your preferred difficulty, you're then given the option of either playing as Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield. The game doesn't tell you this, but both characters do have slightly different experiences with how the story is told, as well as how you will be playing. For example, Jill has more inventory space, can unlock doors with her lockpick because she's the master of unlocking, and can avoid certain scenarios entirely. As for negatives, Jill isn't great at handling weapons. Chris, on the other hand, has more health, is good with weapons, but will have less inventory space, and will have to find many keys to unlock doors that Jill could just go through with her lockpick. Her lockpick and extra inventory space will make playing Resident Evil a smoother experience. So, I recommend picking Jill for first-time players. Now for something I didn't even notice till I beat the damn game. If you want to change Jill or Chris's outfit, you see that little arrow right there? Yeah, just go up or down and you get an array of costumes. I did not know this, and I really wish I did because you could play as Chris on steroids from Resident Evil 5. Unfortunately, you can't change the outfit in-game, which kinda sucks. After choosing your character, you get to choose between 2 control schemes. The new modernized controls, or the classic tank controls from the original. The modern controls are easier to use as they have been designed for the analog stick, where the tank controls were designed for the D-pad. The tank controls are janky and are obviously a product of its time. That's not to say that the classic controls aren't useful. In fact, the struggle of using the controls can amplify the anxiety of zombie encounters. Personally, I would recommend the modern controls, but if you want to struggle and feel retro, go for the classic. After picking your controls and setting the aspect ratio, the game shows a player a pre-rendered cutscene. Some quick exposition reveals that you're part of an Alpha team, currently trying to find your compatriots of missing Bravo team. Bravo team went to go investigate the strange murders that have been happening in Raccoon City. Murders where the victim was apparently Eden. Your team discovers the Bravo team helicopter in complete shambles in the forest. While investigating on the ground, your team is attacked by a horde of ferocious zombie dogs. Your teammate gets ambushed, and Jill freezes in place after realizing her bullets aren't affecting the dogs whatsoever. Or maybe she missed her shots, I can't tell. This might be an inappropriate time to say this, but damn, Jill's really hot. I don't know what kind of dress code STARS has for its female officers, but the only protective gear that she's wearing are these shoulder pads. Chris saves Jill and then the both of them run. The dogs almost catch up, but Wesker saves the both of them. Not sure why he does that considering where the story goes, but alright. Chris, Jill, Wesker, and your other teammate Barry run towards a giant mansion to escape. Now this next part is different depending on who you play as, but we'll continue as Jill. Once they make it inside, Jill notices that Chris is missing. He was literally right next to you, so I'm not even sure how that's possible to lose him, but whatever, it's a motivation to explore the mansion. This mansion is actually really clean considering it's infested with zombies. The lights are on and even the candles are lit. That's very considerate of them. Jill hears a gunshot in the other room, so you and Barry go to investigate. You both discover a puddle of blood in the next room. Barry checks it out while you go into the next room to investigate the gunshot. This is where you encounter your first zombie. This game doesn't have you control Jill through the usual first or third person perspective. The way the camera works in Resident Evil is that each room or area has a stationary perspective that the player controls the character. This kind of camera implementation was a really smart way to get past the original PlayStation's limited graphical capabilities. If the player can't move the camera within a 3D space, then the developers don't have to worry about rendering said 3D space. This allows the developers to use high quality images as pre-rendered backgrounds. This is why, even to this day, the environments in this remake look incredible. There are a few areas with dated textures, but most of the game is on par with games that have come out this generation. When playing with these stationary perspectives, it adds a lot to the vulnerability the player feels when in combat. There are times when the camera will put you at a disadvantage, like not being able to see your target. Oh, what? What? If you want to accurately shoot the zombie, you'll have to either take a step back and wait for the zombie to come in view, or you can walk directly into the area of the zombie so that the perspective changes into your favor. This approach is risky because you could accidentally walk right into the zombie, but you won't be wasting time. When aiming, you can't move your character. You can only move Jill left and right, or up and down. This mechanic adds a lot to the anxiety of combat. Purposely restricting the player's movement keeps the player vulnerable. If you want to shoot the zombie in the head and hopefully blow it off, you'll have to let them move in on you so that you can have a more accurate shot. These controls are great for their intended purpose, and work wonderfully well with the fixed camera angles. My only issue with the camera angles is that I sometimes felt cheated out of my health whenever I turned a corner and a zombie just happened to be there. No, okay. Oh wow, gee. After you shoot and kill the zombie, you go back to Barry. This is where the game takes away your independence of killing the zombie because apparently you didn't actually kill it. Barry pulls out his giant magnum and finishes the zombie. The both of you go back to report to Wesker, only to find that now he's also missing. Barry suggests that the both of you split up, which is something that always goes well. After Barry gives you a lockpick, you're left to play the game with the objective of exploring the mansion to find your teammates. I talked about how well this game holds up graphically, but let's talk about the environments themselves. Setting your survival horror game in a giant mansion is a great idea. Mansions are just homes for people who have too much money, so there are going to be the expected locations. A dining hall, kitchen, bedrooms, a backyard. These make sense. But that's boring. So you're also going to visit an underground aquarium with a giant shark, an underground mine shaft, an underground laboratory. All these locations, excluding the mine shaft, look great and add to the game's experience. It's actually surprising that a lot of these areas are new to the remake. They were added seamlessly and you really feel their absence when returning to the original. Most rooms have environmental puzzles, and though I understand the excess of them from a gameplay perspective, it does get a little ridiculous when I have to play Moonlight Sonata on the piano to open up a secret room so I can get an emblem that I have to place in another room that will open up the inner mechanisms of a grand clock that I have to mess with by looking at a painting so I can get a key that goes to another room. It's a little absurd. These puzzles only require a third-grade intellect to figure out, so most of them are really easy. But there are times when I had no idea what I was supposed to do. Take this giant plant monster, for example. The game tells you that you'll need a specific combination of chemicals to kill it. After I did the math, I had a jar of acid to kill the plant. I entered the room where the plant is, and the game wouldn't let me use the acid. This is a big room, so I thought maybe I just wasn't applying it to the right area. But no, that's not what it was. If you want to kill the plant monster, you have to go to a completely different location that is totally easy to miss, where the roots of the plant are inside. Listen, if the player needs to go all the way across an area to do an objective that will kill something that's in the area you're already in, the game should maybe help the player by nudging them in the right direction. Because how was I supposed to figure this out on my own without having to tediously check every area on the map that I haven't been to? At that point, you'd be better off just looking up a walkthrough. Let's go deeper into combat. One of the first things you'll do when searching the mansion is that you'll find this dagger. These are weapons that give you a last stand against enemies. If a zombie gets too close and starts gnawing at your neck, you'll automatically pull out the dagger and lunge it right into the head of the zombie, with no loss of health. This mechanic also comes in the form of a taser, and the amount you can carry seems to be limitless as I had 4 daggers and 3 tasers at one point. These don't take up inventory space either, so it's only beneficial to carry them. I'd actually say that this mechanic is too beneficial to the player. Unlimited carrying capacity with no cost of inventory space just hinders the game's survival intensity. Maybe the point of this mechanic was a response to my complaint from earlier. You know, when you run into zombies just because you turned a corner. There's a handful of weapons you can use in this game, so let's go over them. When starting off as Jill, you will already be carrying the survival knife and the Beretta pistol. There are tons of people I've seen online who can utilize the survival knife better than I can, but it's definitely the worst weapon in your arsenal. You'll need the zombie to be right next to you to use it, which is obviously dangerous. Personally, I just never used it. The Beretta holds 15 rounds and will get the job done at first, but later enemies will become almost impossible to kill with it. Take the challenge if you like, but I imagine most people will keep it in the supply bin for the rest of the game once they get to that point. At least ammo is relatively easy to find for it. You know what weapon does stay effective throughout the whole game? The shotgun. The shotgun is a weapon you'll find early on. It holds 6 rounds, and if you let the zombie get close enough, you can blow its head off in one shot. This doesn't happen all the time, but if you're willing to take the risk, you'll completely incapacitate it from coming back. More on that in a bit. There's also the automatic shotgun that you can only get if you save your teammate. The main difference is that this shotgun holds more rounds and kinda looks cooler. Ammo isn't too hard to find for the shotgun, but try your best to stock up when you can. The shotguns are really great and feel awesome to use. The grenade launcher is a weapon that holds 6 rounds that only Jill can use. That's a shame for Chris because the grenade launcher has a variety of different ammo that can be used. Explosive rounds, flame rounds, and acid rounds are the 3 different rounds that you can use for the grenade launcher. Each have a different effect on different enemies. For an explanation, I'll be reading this response from Lanza Granados from a Steam discussion. Fire rounds have weaker base damage but have a nice boost on insect plant-based creatures, and can also incinerate zombies. Acid rounds fire more concentrated shots, which is good against single targets, and do extra damage on reptilian BOWs, such as hunters and yawn. Explosive rounds do neutral damage, so no benefit there, but they have a bigger spread, so you have to use them at short range, or against groups for best effectiveness. The self-defense gun is a gun that you can only use once because it only has one shot. Use it against any non-boss enemy for an insta-kill, then toss it after you're done. The flamethrower is a weapon that only Chris can use. It starts out with 100% and each second of use is worth 1%. It can only be used in the area you find it in, so it's not that versatile. Now for the best gun in the game, the Magnum. So that's where the revolver was. Does it have ammo? Hey, guess what, boys? You get to be my target practice. Oh! The Magnum is the most powerful gun in your first playthrough. You'll have to do some item fetching and tedious item check in your inventory to get the thing, but it's totally worth it. The Magnum holds 6 rounds, but hey, if you can use it effectively just like how I showed, you can even kill 2 zombies with one hit. Jill can also obtain Barry's Magnum if you refuse to let him help during a certain scenario. There's one other weapon that's as powerful as the Magnum you'll get during your first play, and that's the rocket launcher. There's not really anything I can say about this since you're only going to be using it during the final boss, but it's effective, that's for sure. You've probably noticed that I said the Magnum and rocket launcher are the most powerful weapons during your first playthrough. That's because you'll receive a reward if you can beat the game on normal or hard before 5 or 3 hours. The Samurai Edge pistol is a better handgun than the Beretta. It has infinite ammo and is unlocked by beating the game on normal or hard in less than 5 hours. The anti-tank launcher is the most powerful weapon in the entire game, has infinite ammo, and is unlocked by completing the game on normal or hard in less than 3 hours. Now I didn't receive either of these weapons because I am not going to beat this game in under 5 hours, let alone 3. Most of your encounters are with zombies. They're slow, so they're easy to avoid if you have enough space. As the saying goes, individually, not a problem, but a group of them can be real trouble. It's best not to kill the zombies if you can avoid it, because if you do take a zombie out, they'll come back later as a Crimson Head. Crimson Heads are zombies that will run right at you and slash you with their giant fucking claw hand. I'm not sure how the T-Virus makes these zombies come back faster and with a giant claw hand, but whatever, these are fantastic enemies. Crimson Heads are much more difficult to deal with, especially if you confront a crowd of them. The only way to kill a Crimson Head is to shoot them till they fall down, pour gasoline on their bodies, and then light them on fire. Here's the problem though. Carrying a canister of gasoline as well as a lighter will take up 2 of your inventory slots. This is especially difficult if you're playing as Chris. Granted, the lighter doesn't take up a space, he just already has it. The canister only holds up to 2 uses of gasoline at a time. So if you enter an area with 3 zombies, you'll have to come back from refilling your canister just to make sure that you can burn all the corpses. This might sound like a tedious task, and it is, but if you want to avoid walking back and forth, which you'll already be doing a lot of that already, you'll need to either not kill the zombies or let them get close enough so that you can, more accurately, blow their head off. This game does a really great job encouraging you to face your target head on. The Crimson Heads weren't even in the original. They were first implemented in the remake, and I'm so glad that they were, because they changed the dynamic of the gameplay drastically. Always remember, if you pass by a zombie on the ground that you didn't put there yourself, burn the fucker. Cerberuses are zombie dogs, and since I rather call them zombie dogs, that's how I'm going to refer to them. Zombie dogs are quick and jumpy, so you'll need to take them out quickly. They're usually only able to get you if you're outside, or if you open the front door. Out of all the enemies in the game, the spiders actually give me the creeps. This might just be me having a phobia, but I really feel like the spiders have the best designs. Man, I know they're like just tarantulas, but the way they're just so big and giant and walk around and spit acid at you, man, fucking gets under my skin. The spiders aren't that hard to take down. Like I said, you'll mainly have to try to avoid the poison. And if you do get poisoned, you'll need to get a blue herb to cure yourself. Quick side note, Jill and Chris have health bars that you can only view in your inventory. Green is good, red is bad, you know how it goes. The way you heal yourself is by collecting green herbs throughout the mansion. There's also red and blue herbs, and you can mix these to amplify the herb's effects. Red and green will fully recover your health, and like I said, blue will take care of the poison. You can even mix all 3 together to have max effect. It's weird that mixing them all together grinds them into a brown color. 3 enemies that you should just avoid are crows, snakes, and bees. Crows don't usually attack you unless you mess up a puzzle or you attack them first. Snakes will slither towards you, but they're easy to outrun. You can also avoid the bees this way as well. But if you are going to take care of the bees, I would recommend the Beretta. The next enemies you'll be fighting are hunters. These things don't show up until later in the game, so you don't have to worry about them for a time. But when they do show up, they become the most difficult and most common enemy you'll encounter for a limited time. When you see a hunter, you need to kill it or run from it quickly. Hunters are fast and can leap across the room to swipe you with a critical hit. The last non-boss enemies are chimeras. Chimeras are enemies you'll only encounter in a specific location in the game. But goddamn, they're almost as creepy as the spiders. These creepy humanoid bugs will come out of air shafts and crawl on the ceilings to snatch you from above. I recommend being stocked up on daggers if you're going to try and take down a crowd. You'll learn how to maneuver them, and they'll eventually have to drop down to try to run at you. That's when you blast some rounds at them to take them down. The difficulty level of boss fights is relying on how prepared the player is. If you collect a death mask and place it on one of these stone faces, this coffin will one by one lose each of its chains. This process clearly indicates that whatever is in the coffin will attack you once it's out. Before I place the last death mask, I made sure to stock up on ammo and health. The coffin fell, and this is when the player encounters their first Crimson Head. Quick correction, this is actually not true. This is not the first Crimson Head you face. And technically their first boss. Seeing this zombie run at you for the first time might catch you off guard, but if you just... Yeah, if you just do that. In fact, the majority of boss fights in Resident Evil are super underwhelming because of how prepared the player usually is. The only time you'll ever feel anxious during a boss fight is if you go into an area unprepared for one. This happened when I encountered the boss Jan. Jan is this humongous snake that will slither towards you and attack. Doesn't sound that difficult to deal with, and it's really not. But since I thought I was going into another room, I didn't stock up on ammo and health, and therefore I had to make sure that I hit all my shots accurately. The other boss fights, like the Black Tiger or even the final boss Tyrant, can either let you leave the area so you can come back stocked up, or the game is screaming at you that you're going to fight a boss, so you prepare anyways. Plant 42, Neptune, and Lisa Trevor are bosses defeated not through combat, but instead with a little puzzle or some backtracking. And that's why these bosses are also really easy. The idea and character design behind these bosses are quite good, but unfortunately the execution leaves room to be desired. If you want your boss encounters to be more challenging, then I would recommend raising the difficulty, but then there's going to be a difficulty imbalance when you're just fighting regular enemies, and it'll be a little all over the place. Resident Evil's combat and puzzles are only 2/3 of the game. The last major piece of the gameplay you'll be doing is backtracking. Lots and lots of backtracking. The backtracking in this game isn't that bad if you know what you're doing, but it can become a tedious endeavor when you have to walk all the way to the other side of the mansion to only realize that you didn't bring the right item, and you have to walk all the way back. Thankfully, the map that you collect bits and pieces of throughout your journey is super helpful in navigating areas that you need to go next or areas that you still haven't collected all the items from. I'm going to delve into the game's story, so if you don't want spoilers, I recommend clicking off now. Granted, I mean, it's not like Resident Evil has like a compelling story or anything, but each their own. The framework of Resident Evil's story is great on paper. You choose between two characters, enter a mansion, and then search that said mansion for your teammates while fighting off monsters. Sounds great. The execution of the story, however, could be better. You'll constantly be left to explore the mansion alone, even though it becomes apparent that that is not a good idea. As Jill, if you pick up this shotgun from this wall, you'll immediately find yourself trapped in a hall with a ceiling slowly coming down to crush you. The way out is locked, so Jill is just hopelessly waiting to die. But luckily, Barry just happens to be passing by and is able to save you. Jill almost became a Jill sandwich, and was only fortunate enough to be alive because someone happened to be passing by. Man, Barry and Jill should really stick together.
Anyway, we should get back to searching for Wesker and Chris.
Oh. I get that the game wouldn't be as effective if you had a partner by your side the whole time. I'm just asking for a better narrative excuse for why that's the case. But Zap, you might be saying, Barry doesn't want to be by your side because he's being blackmailed by Wesker to let Jill die. So that is the narrative excuse. Yeah, it's weird how Wesker and Barry both had moments where they intended to let Jill die, but at different moments in the game they saved Jill. I can at least understand Barry because he's supposed to be internally conflicted because Wesker is threatening his family. But for real, why didn't Wesker just let the zombie dogs devour Chris and Jill in the opening cutscene? Or why didn't he just shoot Jill after this conversation they had in the hallway? This is what I mean by the story's bad execution. Oh, I should probably talk about the plot detail that Wesker wants stars gone. The main antagonist of this game, and practically the entire franchise, is the Umbrella Corporation. Umbrella experiments with biohazard weapons, and they disguise themselves as a pharmaceutical company. Wesker is part of Umbrella, and alright, listen, I'm not going to go in depth with the lore of the franchise when I'll probably need to play the rest of the game to understand it better myself. For the first game, all you need to know is that Umbrella was made by 3 old guys and they developed a bunch of viruses that, when used on people or animals, made them into monsters. This was the cause of the outbreak. Umbrella wants to destroy stars because, I don't know, having a police task force interfere with you doing illegal experiments is a good enough reason I can think of. Someone's probably yelling at me that this is probably all explained in some file I missed. The mystery of someone on your team being a traitor is really funny because it should be immediately obvious that anyone who wears sunglasses at night is probably evil.
The stars are finished. Someone is a traitor.
Oh, that was a...
Enrico!
Oh no, I knew you so well.
Traitor? Who?
Wow, Jill, get your fucking gun and go check. You're a police officer. Go run into... Holy shit, your response time. The ending of the game reveals everything, but with how obvious it was, plus the subpar voice acting, makes the ending just a big ball of cheese. Oh, what am I kidding? The whole game's story is a ball of cheese. You know, Wesker is really dumb, because if you play the ending as Chris, Wesker will shoot your partner Rebecca point blank at her bulletproof vest. Why would you shoot someone in the chest that's very obviously wearing a bulletproof vest? Why didn't he aim for the head? Once you defeat the final boss Tyrant on the helipad, your teammate Brad swoops in with a helicopter and saves the rest of you guys. Then the mansion explodes with an early 2000s special effect. The first time I played, I was so caught up with escaping the mansion that well...
It's okay. He's alive. I just know.
Oh, we left Chris! Yeah, depending on who you play as, you'll find Jill or Chris imprisoned in a cellar that you're supposed to let go and escape the mansion. I forgot. But doing so does give you the best ending. Credits roll and that's it. You beat Resident Evil. I'm not great at analyzing music, but I should mention that this game's soundtrack is really good. Each piece sets a mood and enhances the experience. After finishing the game, and going back to the original, I really gotta say, the Resident Evil remake really is one of the best remakes ever made. Going back to the original is a charming experience, but if you're indecisive on how to experience this first game, I definitely go with the remake. As for the remake itself, it's a great game with some nerve-wracking gameplay, but really cheesy dialogue and story. I'm not necessarily saying that hinders the experience, I kind of find it charming. This game is $20 on Steam, or you can find it bundled with Resident Evil 0 on PS4 or Xbox for the same price on Amazon or eBay. There's also the Switch version, but it's double the price, so I wouldn't recommend going that route. Unless that's the only system you have. You could also wait for the Steam sale where the game will probably be $7 to $8. Whatever the case, besides the Switch, this game is super affordable to play. Well, that's about it. This video will probably come out after Christmas, so happy late Christmas. I know I haven't been uploading for a couple of months now, but I should have an update video uploaded at the same time, so you can check that out to find out why. If I added the update here at the end of the video, then it'd just be longer than it needed to be. As always, if you want to watch these videos a week in advance, consider donating to my Patreon. Huge thank you to my current patrons who help bring you this video. Now hopefully I can get to the Resident Evil 2 remake. I've been Zap from Zap Arts. I'll see you in the next one.